Hey everyone, this is SJ, and I'm bringing Shannon Q and G-Man. Just kidding, just just G-Man today, and we're going to talk about the coronavirus. And I know that everyone in the world is impacted by the coronavirus, so I'm sure it's no surprise. You all know what the coronavirus is. It's really unfortunate that it's been sweeping the planet and killing many people. It's a very dangerous virus. It spreads really quickly. Uh, the United States is pretty much starting to be cut off. For example, you're going to notice we're not having flights coming in here from China or Europe. Some of the states right now, 5 states have decided that they're going to completely close down pretty much. And so that means that a lot of small businesses were going to go out of business. And that's one of my big concerns, is watching these small businesses go out of business, because that's a lot of them are living hand to mouth. A lot of them don't have much income or much savings at all. And so there's a lot of people running or working in daycares, and people working in certain businesses where they're just not having the service. If you're in retail, say you're in a retail furniture store, for example, that's non-essential. So you're just basically being put out of business. And so a lot of things that I think about this are, let's figure out what we can do as a group, as a big happy family in a way, to help our fellow people who are in these dire straits. A lot of people don't know how they're going to pay their rent or their mortgage, and it's a pretty severe issue. 40 million people in California, basically, if they're non-essential, they're not allowed to go out. Same in Illinois, Ohio, and New York. And I think there's another state that's looking into doing that. And so G-Man and I thought we'd talk about some of this stuff, and a big question of why God would allow this sort of thing to happen. And so let me introduce G-Man before we go further, and have G-Man talk a little bit too.
All right, great. First and foremost, how is everybody doing today? It's funny that we're talking about this topic here today, because my last couple of videos that I've done on my other channel, GTV, I've been talking about using this crisis as an opportunity to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ. You know what I mean? If you have extra alcohol, any extra Purell, anything like that, that a person can use in this time of crisis, is just be a great time to give it to give it to people who don't have it, and do it in the name of Jesus, and follow it up with the gospel, and just talk to them about Bible prophecy and what the Bible says about the times that we're living in today. It's an excellent time, because usually when there's a crisis, we usually have something of a revival that goes on in the church, where people become more committed or recommit themselves to the cause of God. So for me, I know it's a very trying time for a lot of people, and some people might not like hearing me say this, but I believe that this is a good time for us to get out there and to show the love of God, and not just talk about it. Like, go out there and literally show it. Sacrifice what you have for other people, and let them see that, that the God that lives in us is real. You know.
You're right. You're right. Yes, sacrificing is really important. That just reminds me, a lot of it is we can't really go out in a lot of cases, though, like physically. So if there's a way that we can do it, where, say, you're shipping things to people, or you're on the internet trying to do things. My church this morning delivered service online. I'm sure yours did too, probably. Do you have a church that delivers service online?
I have a church that I watch. Yes. My brother's church is on the internet. As a matter of fact, just about everybody's church is on the internet now. But I try to eat on a regular basis. I don't just wait until Sunday. I try to get some spiritual food every single day.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, so and I would just say, like, if I were running a business, what I did, I'll just give a couple of ideas, just because I do teach business. And so I think that it's important for people to try to figure out how to stay in business. I just want to mention a couple of things before we get really into our topic. But for example, I used to run a family patio furniture business, and we sold it around 2007 or 8. I forget which year it was, but 2007, I think it was. We sold the furniture business, and my parents had been working in a different business as well, and they've really thrived in that particular business. But one of the things that I was thinking about, the people who bought it from us, and I actually still know them and I'm affiliated with them. So I sent them an email, because I was looking and noticing that they're not very heavy online. They have a nice online website, but they could use a better thing. So they should purchase Google Ads, I told them. And I was trying to give them some ideas on ways to try to really amp up the online. Same thing, if anyone's selling retail, figure out ways to deliver online. If you can do that, that's wonderful. If you're in hospitality, that's where you're really hard hit. And I'm not sure even how to help, except to say that a lot of people are looking for drivers. So Uber Eats, you could affiliate yourself with them, and maybe bring food to people that way. You could donate your time, if there's a way to you go around and bringing food to people in need out of the kindness of your heart, rather than charging them. That could be something that could be pretty nice. There's just some different ideas that people can do to help out. But why would God allow such a thing? What do you think, G-Man? Why did we have this? And there was the swine flu, and there's been all sorts of, a long time ago in 1918, we had the Spanish flu, and we've had epidemics over the centuries. Why does he allow this kind of thing? What would you say?
Well, the short answer is I believe that he's doing it to demonstrate, our sinful nature and to show us, our need for a savior. If God wanted to, he could snap his fingers and the coronavirus would disappear. There would never been an H1N1, but then there would be nothing for us to learn. You know what I mean? There would be no need for us to think about, oh, okay, I haven't fallen short. I haven't fallen short of the glory of God. I'm really a good person. What do I need a savior for? God could just snap his fingers and solve everything for me. That's something. And I ain't trying to be a jerk about this, nothing like that. But that's almost something like thinking like that is almost like how a spoiled brat would think. You know what I mean? God has given us a certain amount of free will. Okay. And he wants us to use that free will to glorify him. Not all of us are doing that. And we're doing things that are causing viruses to come about, new bacteria to come about. We're polluting the air, we're polluting the water, we're polluting the food with so-called scientific breakthroughs. We're stripping all of the food of the nutrient of its nutrients, and causing bacteria and viruses to become immune to medicines that would have helped in the past. Like, from what I understand, what a vaccine is, basically what they do is they put like a dead version of the virus in it, and then they combine some other things in it, and then they give you a shot of it, and then your body is supposed to get immune to it. Apparently, this coronavirus can't. They haven't been able to do that with this coronavirus yet because it's immune to everything that we tried to do in the past.
Yeah, well, there are some promises.
And I think that I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, well, I do think there are some promising things out there as far as vaccines. And just because we have the best minds of 7 billion people working on this. So we've got some great people who are investing themselves fully, as fully as they can, to figuring out a cure for this or to figuring out treatments. They've looked at malaria drugs, and they think that there could be some promise in malaria drugs as far as treating it. So there is some promise out there. But in the meantime, just this lockdown has really impacted. It's almost like God has put the planet on pause. You think of it that way?
He's put it on pause, and he's also making sure that his word comes true. I know there's some atheists out there that don't believe in the Bible and don't believe in Christ and everything, but Jesus did say in Matthew 24 that before he returns, and before the man, actually, I don't know about before the man of sin is revealed, but before he returns, that there's going to be pestilence and earthquakes in diverse places. So for the Christian, granted, a lot of this is inconveniencing us. People are dying, people are suffering because of this. Our businesses are suffering and everything. But to me, it's an exciting time because it shows that Christ's words are true. You know what I mean? And that these things are actually going to happen. I actually was talking to someone about the whole corona thing and whatnot, and it was like, how long do you think this is going to last? Some of us were saying like a week, two, maybe a couple of months. But I said, what we're going through right now from a Christian point of view is nothing compared to what's coming in the future. You know what I mean? There's going to come a point where there's going to be like these locusts that are going to sting people, and those illnesses are going to last for 5 months, and people are going to seek death, and they're not going to be able to find it according to the book of Revelation. You know what I mean? So
yeah, the end times. That's a scary subject. And actually, just to mention that subject, if we talk about the end times, there's a lot of predictions in the Bible that speak to the end times in the book of Daniel and in the book of Revelation, obviously, and in Ezekiel. And so we've gotten some hints, like you're mentioning, and some of them kind of relate to seeing some horrible things happen in the world and horrible calamities. And John Lloyd, just when you mentioned this, he says, "Hey, Dr. SJ, astroplane, not plain T. Did Jesus and Mother Teresa use rubber gloves with the leper?" I don't know if Mother Teresa did, but I don't think they had rubber gloves back then. So it's a good question. So.
Oh, I want to say this because me and you kind of talked about this on the phone, and I kind of want to flip the script because usually when a catastrophe happens in the world, any atheist will come to us and be like, "Well, God, if your God is real, you know what I mean? Why would he allow the coronavirus to exist? Why would he allow H1N1? You know what I mean?" And we always play defense, trying to defend God and his nature and why he permits these things to happen. First, let me give an answer for that. William Lane Craig says, and I agree with him, he says, the burden of proof is on the atheists to show, because some of them will say, well, how can you say that God exists while evil exists, right? And William Lane Craig says they have to be able to show how God existing and evil existing is not incompatible.
You're right. You're right. Because if you want to speak a little bit to that, because you and I also talked about this, we were talking about this idea of social evolution. So a lot of atheists like to say, well, we've just evolved to be this way. We found it more beneficial to be empathetic, or we thought it more beneficial to be selfless. But that doesn't really relate to what evolution of actually shows us. So this idea of being selfless and sacrificing yourself for the good of others or the good of society, how do you explain that? They could say, oh, well, it makes it socially beneficial. That's just you positing post hoc, looking at a situation and trying to say that, oh, it must be this. That's like Rudyard Kipling when he basically said, well, camels have humps. It must be because, and come up with some crazy reason because they wanted to grow humps so that people could fit right between the humps when they rode on them or something like that.
That is crazy. That is crazy. But when me and you was on the phone, one of the things that I pointed out was okay, in my worldview and your worldview, and the Christians that are watching us in our worldview, that obviously God is directly involved in our lives, and He allows these things. For the atheist, there is no God. So how do you explain the coronavirus from your worldview? How do you explain evil from your worldview? And
That's
you
so
want to know what?
true.
Before I came on this show, I figured I better prepare myself for their answers. And I actually went on YouTube and actually looked for an answer. There aren't really a whole lot of videos of atheists answering that question.
Yeah, yeah, because the explanation is in our worldview, this is a temporary stepping stone to the next world. And in our worldview, this whole purpose of having a lot of evil and a lot of terrible things happen in this world is they help grow us spiritually. But in the atheistic world perspective, there is no purpose at all in life. There's no greater meaning in life. And there's evil that just occurs. And then one day you're just going to die and the earth will burn up eventually. And so the atheistic worldview is quite nihilistic when you really take it to its full measures.
When you bring it to a logical conclusion, it's quite depressing. When you die, you're going to be fertilizer. Then what was the point of doing anything? You know what I mean? But it's still a fair question because it forces the atheists to play defense now. It forces them to be on the defensive. Because the only reason they're asking us that question, is a form of street epistemology for them to try to, get us to doubt our faith and to join their ranks. Well, this question isn't so much for them to join ours, but to cause them to think about the question as a whole. God isn't in their worldview. Where did the coronavirus come from? How did it come to be? Why does evil exist in your worldview? And how does social evolution prove your point to be true? You know what I mean? Like someone will say, well, we came from the animal kingdom and we didn't even count things to be moral or immoral. Some of them will say that. Well, if they didn't count things for being moral or immoral, then how do we dictate what's moral and what's immoral today in an absolute sense? And as a matter of fact, when they ask the question, SJ, why did God create the coronavirus? Why did God allow the coronavirus to exist? They're making an objective moral claim at that point. They're saying that it is objectively true that the coronavirus is an evil thing across the board. It's not subjective no more. So that now they're saying that objective moral values exist, right? If objective moral values exist, then absolutes exist. And if absolutes exist, guess who else exists? God exists. You know what I mean? So they don't even know that they're setting themselves up for that when they're asking questions like that these days.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I was just thinking, yes, this idea of objective morality, if we have objective morality that's transcended to generations and people and eras and cultures, to follow truth, to value life, to consider liberty, justice, and freedom and those kind of things. If that exists, then there must be a transcendent moral lawgiver. So, I mean, we could go on and on with the massive evidence that we have and the huge cumulative case we have in support of God and Christianity more specifically. But and you and I have done a little bit of that before, but this actually, I would say that this sort of thing a lot of times pulls on people's heartstrings. There was a guy down in Naples who I just heard about on the news. He went into a restaurant and he realized that I think it was he carried in there $10,000 and he ended up giving all the servers in there $500 each in this restaurant because it was one of the places he went and he felt really badly for him. So you see some people coming out and doing really good things, and God's just, this is one way that, as C.S. Lewis said, he gets a megaphone and he gets our attention. And so sometimes the terrible things can bring out the best in people.
I was thinking about playing a video with William Lane Craig actually answering the question of why does God allow evil and suffering? Would you be interested in hearing that?
Sure.
Okay, I'll have to play it on my phone. I don't know if they can hear it because I don't know if I can screen share or whatever, but I'll play it on my phone so everybody can hear it. Just give me a sec. Oh, wait a minute. I think you're still talking on here. So let me. Okay, so let me play the video with William Lane Craig. Can you hear it?
In a perfect world,
Yes.
I have to
Okay.
ask them, but if God is all good and all powerful and all knowing, why does he allow bad things to happen to good people? This is, I think, the principal argument for the atheistic side that my opponents in the debates will sometimes bring up. And I think that there's a couple of ways to respond to this. First, we need to understand what the atheist is claiming here. Is he arguing that God and suffering are logically incompatible with each other? If he is, then he needs to show that there's some sort of implicit contradiction there, because there's no explicit contradiction. And I would say that no atheist has ever been able to sustain that burden of proof, to show that there are necessarily true assumptions that would reveal some kind of a contradiction between God and the suffering and evil in the world. In fact, I think we can prove that they are compatible by just adding a third proposition, and that would be that God has morally sufficient reasons for permitting the evil and suffering in the world. As long as that's even possible, it shows that God and evil are logically compatible. So that logical version of the argument doesn't work. Now, very quickly, there's a probabilistic version.
Now, before he goes into the second part of what he's talking about, well, one of the things that the atheists like to point out when they're talking about this particular topic is, I believe in Isaiah 46, I think it is, where it says that I create the good, I create light, I create the darkness, I also create evil. And they'll say, well, what kind of a good God would create evil? If you look at what the word evil there means, it's talking about what do you call it? I just had it in my head. It's talking about it's not a moral evil, but it's a necessary evil to cause a person to repent. There's a word for it, but it just escapes me right now. But I'm going to play the video here. But that's what they like to go to a lot when they try to make the argument.
The argument which says, all right, God and evil are logically compatible, but nevertheless, it's highly improbable that God exists, given the evil and suffering in the world. And I think there's a number of moves that the theist can make in response to that argument to show that it's not improbable that God exists, given the suffering in the world.
All right, you want to say something on that, Esha?
Yeah, no, I think that William Lane Craig is on the money. He's just he's a sharp cat. A lot of people have, as Lawrence Krauss and some other atheists have said when they've gone to debate him, they've said he puts the fear of God in atheists, which I think is hilarious.
He has a PhD, and he has a PhD, and what is it, philosophy?
Philosophy, yeah, and I think he's also got one in religion. I think he might even have two. So he's a
tough
tremendous debater. Yeah, and he's got a good point though. If we think about evil and we think about love and the things that are in this world, how do we explain them? So how do you explain the evil in the world? Jesus actually offered us a pretty good explanation when what happened to him on the cross. He basically said we've all got to bear our own crosses and we all have to face evils. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I've overcome the world. Remember?
Amen and amen. Amen and amen. So it's not so much that God is allowing the coronavirus. The issue is, does God have a sufficient reason for allowing it? And we know that it is, because we know ultimately a lot of people are going to end up getting saved because of this. And
Exactly.
that's what matters at the end of the day.
Exactly. Yeah, and that is what matters. And a lot of people, my mom always said, she said, well, if people don't believe, what happens when a tragedy happens? Do you just sort of not even pray? And you don't not even ask? And I have a sister-in-law who's pregnant right now, and she's sort of agnostic, and she's older, definitely older, and she's pregnant, and so there's this coronavirus, and she's actually due in a couple of weeks, and this is the ideal time for her to be praying, because if God answers her prayers, it'd just be wonderful. So,
and if God answers her prayers, then she should respond appropriately by bowing the knee to Christ and becoming his follower, becoming his disciple. Because at the end of the day, I think that's why he allows these things to happen. And also to judge the wickedness that goes on in this world. There are some people that do some gross things behind closed doors and in the public so everybody can see it. And it causes a lot of us to get sick. And then they want to automatically blame God. At some point, we as human beings have got to take responsibility for what we've done to the earth and what we've done to the environment. And because of it, sicknesses and these kind of things are going to happen. Not to mention, we have germ warfare. We can create certain things, like certain biological, chemical elements, where we can just where the military can just put some of it on the ground in some area and murder the entire population is in that particular area. Why do stuff like that exist? If human beings are so good, and everything, why do we have an atomic bomb? Why do we have an H bomb? You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Oh,
Why do
you're
we have
right.
like tanks and all these other things and whatnot?
Why do we
It's
need
the wrong
defense?
question. It's the wrong question on whether or not uh, uh, why God has allowed the coronavirus to exist if He's all good. What you should be asking is where did this coronavirus come from to begin with? Where did any of these viruses come from to begin with? And is it possible that a human being is responsible for coming up with this virus? And maybe it got out of the laboratory, maybe it was biological warfare, and they don't want to tell us. We don't know where this thing came from. We don't automatically blame God.
Yeah, I actually just saw a study on the source of the virus. So they decided it didn't come out of a lab. Now we know it came out of the Wuhan province in China, and we know that. And we know that they're saying in this study it either came from a couple of different kinds of animals, but the one I can't remember what one of them was called, but the other one was a bat. So somehow people were either eating bats or doing something with bats where it interacted. Apparently the street markets are full of dead animals and things like that in China, and some of these older rural towns and very poor people, and so the transmission between the bats and the humans occurred. Now it's unfortunately wreaked havoc on the planet. And China was also the source of SARS. And so just when you have a population of 1.4 billion people, you've got a setup where it could be a disaster. I mean, they have an absolute disaster. But I think hopefully they've learned from this one, where they'll isolate these people much quicker and make sure nobody flies out if this happens again.
Exactly. One of the things I understand about the coronavirus is that it's primarily hurting people who's over 50 and people who are really young who don't have really good, strong immune systems. But there are people that are getting it and are naturally recovering from it.
Yeah, or people who are asymptomatic. So you don't even know they had, like one of the senators, Rand Paul, just said he's diagnosed with it and he's asymptomatic. You don't even know by looking at him.
And it's very interesting that ironically enough, that all of this is coming out of China. I'm going to sound like a conspiracy theorist here for a moment, but I'm not. I'm just going to throw this out there, though. It's ironic during a time where America and China are having issues and whatnot, that all of a sudden that this virus has come directly out of China. It sounds like they're looking for justification to go to war with them. You know what I mean? So I mean, just putting it out there.
Yeah, well, China's a scary place to live. I mean, Chinese government's pretty scary. It's communistic, and they clamp down on people. If you start talking about the government in China, they can come arrest you the next day. They're constantly watching their public, and so I don't know. They've been saying for the last few days that they've had no new cases of coronavirus. I find that really hard to believe in a population as large as they are, that they're having no new cases. I think to believe them, I just wouldn't believe them. I just don't think they're telling the truth.
Tell me something. Are there people in Russia saying that they got the coronavirus, or?
Yeah, right. It's in Russia now too.
It's in Israel too, and
Yes.
Iraq and Iran.
Yeah, and it's all over Europe. It's really pretty badly in Europe. It's not as much in Africa and not as much in South America compared to some of these other places.
That's interesting. Actually, I don't even want to say that out loud. One of my friends was saying that the coronavirus is only attacking a certain group of people. So, and I don't know if that's true. Because LeBron James, no, not LeBron James. Some of the Lakers have it. Kevin Durant has it. I think Kyrie Irving has it, and some other people that are famous have it. So it's interesting. But one of the things that the atheists might argue against USJ argue against us in this particular video, they're going to say all of this could have been avoided if God would have just destroyed the devil. Why didn't He just destroy the devil? Adam, he would have never been tempted. We would have been perfect in paradise. Yada yada yada. Do you want to answer that, or?
Yeah, I think, and people wonder that, why, if God didn't destroy the devil's sort of a symbol in a way of free will. The devil had the free will to reject God, and he took a third of his angels with him. So he's right now, this is like enemy occupied territory, and we're here to sort of survive and thrive and get better and prosper. And one of the reasons why we have these challenges and we see this evil is because how can you fully understand love if you've never seen evil? Or how can you fully understand success if you've never had, say, humiliation or something like that? How can you fully understand what the value of perseverance is if you never had to persevere? So there's a lot of great qualities that people can develop in this kind of environment. And so God put us in this kind of environment so that we can develop those qualities. Otherwise, we'd be probably prideful, arrogant, and have all sorts of negative qualities that are very equivalent to what they describe as Lucifer having.
And let's play with this topic here for a little bit, because my experience in dealing with atheists here on the internet is that they claim that they will rather be robots and God force us to love him rather than giving us free will and allowing the serpent to come into the garden. I believe that they're being intellectually dishonest when they say things like that, because the same people that were saying that they will rather be robots, their claim to fame is that they're free thinkers. And in order to be a free thinker, you have to have free will. You know what I mean? So
if they think about things enough, if they spend a lot of energy thinking about exactly what, where did reasoning come from? Where did human reasoning, our apprehension of beauty? We have a lot of qualities that are not similar to the animal population. And so where did our logic come from, or our conceptualization of abstracts? There are all kinds of things that humans can do. And if somebody in the chat here was mentioning, and I'm watching the chat, by the way, somebody was mentioning, I can probably answer. I see a question there. I'm going to go ahead and explain that one, but I'll explain that, Andy, in just a second. So one of the, what was I just going to say? No, I just lost I'm reading this. No, we don't put that stuff in there, Andy.
it's tough being a moderator.
I know, I'm looking at that. I mean, you can put stuff in the chat, but you don't say stuff like God. I mean, just don't say that stuff. Just be cool.
Let me go check and make sure to be nice in the live chat.
So I want to say there's a verse in Psalm 137 that talks about, in fact, I'll just pull the verse out and I'll read it so you guys can see it. But actually, I have the explanation for that particular verse. So let me just pull that out really quickly. And that's what Andy was asking about. So there are some atheists in the chat. Oh, and actually, Andy said that the Kalam cosmological argument, going back to William Lane Craig, is not working, but it does work, actually. So if everything that begins to exist has a cause, the universe began to exist. So that means time, space, and matter began to exist. And we've evidenced that with NASA. That means that the universe has a cause. And so the cause must be timeless, spaceless, and immaterial, hence God. And so it follows. Okay, so Psalm 137 is when people were captives. And it was sort of a sarcastic thing. And it says, let me find the exact verse they were talking about. Happy is the one who seizes your infants and dashes them against the rocks. Now, this is something that captives were saying. It says, daughter Babylon, doomed to destruction. Happy is the one who repays you according to what you have done to us. So it's a person lamenting the situation that these people who had captured other people were treating babies in a horrible way. And they were saying it in a rather sarcastic way. So it's like sarcasm. So that's just the bottom line. So AY, I get the silliest people in here. I used to say there's a guy called David who follows, he's got like David 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or something. He gets in the comments of my chat and leaves like 100 comments on each video. So it just makes me think, what, he's obviously paying attention, and maybe there's a little something knocking on the door there, like Jesus, that he needs to just open the door and say, okay, I'm letting you in now because I've kept you out for too long.
Yeah, there's somebody in the chat named Ian who says that the Kalam is lazy theology. I think this Ian guy is pretending. I don't know if you've seen him before, but he looks like he's pretending to be a Christian. Because earlier, I think the same person said that G-Man's embarrassing us Christians, and I'm a Christian or whatever. So
no, G-Man's a good. G-Man is a great guy. The reason why I like to talk to G-Man is because he has an interesting perspective that's different from my perspective sometimes, and I think that it's good to have different kinds of perspectives or different ways to come to Christianity. And I think that, and we both represent different demographics, and I think that's pretty neat too.
Exactly. But yeah, the Kalam is a very good argument, and if it was lazy theology, somebody would have a good answer against it. You know what I mean? They'll say, oh, the universe didn't have a cause. So how did the universe come to be according to science? And can you prove it scientifically? You know what I mean? They can't do it. You know what I mean?
Well, that's one of the reasons why Einstein was so apprehensive about even accepting the possibility of the Big Bang Theory, because he knew that had theological implications. And Einstein was considered an agnostic, I believe. And so a lot of these scientists were, and even people still say it today, they'll ignore what NASA's saying and they'll say, well, no, we think the universe always was eternal. There was something prior to the Big Bang. And we think that, there's no evidence of that. So the evidence is that there was nothing prior to the Big Bang. And so that's where these people are in a little bit of a twist, because they have to say, well, what was prior? So it's definitely not lazy theology. And another one,
if the universe has been eternal and has always been here, then that's an argument for God at that point. You know what I mean? Because if you believe that the universe is always here, then you should have no problem believing that God was always here.
So if we take exactly. We take a deductive approach. We'll start from general and go to specific. So this whole idea, first we say the universe, then we can look at design and the way that we're designed, in the Earth being in 10 habitable zones, and no other planets that we can see with the Hubble telescope have any of these. Only one apparently has 2 habitable zones, but other ones have don't have the habitable zones required for advanced life. And so
Mhm.
that's pretty awesome. And then we have this whole idea of, and so we're what they call like in a Goldilocks sort of thing, just right dimensions. The moon is just the right size. Jupiter is in just the right place to capture a lot of the meteors that would be heading towards us if it weren't there. So we've got a lot of really cool things going on. And then you just look at humans and you say, well, we've got this DNA and there's 3.5 billion, what they call letters. It's just terms that they use, but 3.5 billion of these organized letters in our DNA strands. And so if you think that that has no designer, I think that you're guys in the audience, if that's you, like Andy, sorry, you're just not being logical here. I mean, it's really reasonable to say that if you saw the words "I love you" written on the beach, you would assume that a mind put those there, right? So,
Yeah.
so if we've got a lettering that goes 3.5 billion letters long in this organized sequence, we would imagine that a source or designer is present. So now we got three deductive arguments towards God. And then you talk about Jesus' resurrection, and we have tons of evidence for that.
I want to very quickly talk about the necessity, especially in the times that we're living in today, why evil is necessary. Having good and having evil. Actually, you're married, right?
Yes.
Okay, so how do you know your husband loves you? When he tells you he loves you, how do you know he's not lying to you?
Yeah, that's true. I trust him
And why do you trust him?
because he's never
What does
given me
he
a
got
reason
to
not
do
to.
to show you that he loves you? What does he got to do for him to show you that he loves you?
He doesn't really have to do much. I mean, I mean, we tell each other on a daily basis. That's one thing. He evidences it. He goes out to the store and buys things that I like sometimes, maybe picks up the kind of food that I want to eat that night or something. He just does little things like that just show me. And so,
Would he love you if he said he loved you and says, I'm going to go to the store, and then he slept with another woman? Would you believe that he loved you then?
no, then I would, he'd have to hit the curb.
That's right.
I don't
Now,
put up with
now,
that.
if he said he loved you and now I'm gonna come up with some fictional stuff, but I'll get to the point of why I'm asking these things. So don't kill me or anything like that, Eshe. If he said he loved you and he took your son and he threw him in the middle of I don't know, the Mediterranean Ocean, the Mediterranean, whatever, wash him drown. Do you believe he loved you at that point? No, right?
No.
Okay, and the reason why is because we understand that there are certain things that a person is going to do if they love you, right? When God put the tree of the knowledge of good and evil in the Garden of Eden, it was necessary because there had to be something there where God said, okay, if you love me, you do not eat from this tree. You do what I say and you don't eat from this tree. When Adam and Eve decided they wanted to eat from the tree and not listen to God no more, they demonstrated that they didn't love him the way they would claim. You know what I mean? In 1 John chapter 5, verse 3, it says, for this is the love of God, that we obey his commandments, and his commandments are not grievous. And Jesus says, if you love me, if you love me, obey my voice, obey my commandments. A new commandment I give you, love one another. You know what I mean? If we love him, we'll obey these things. You know what I mean? So you need it there in order for mankind to demonstrate that they love God. Now, the coronavirus is here, right? The coronavirus would not be here if sin didn't exist. If we wasn't on a daily basis, wasn't disobeying God and disobeying his commandments and doing our own things, eating foods that we had no business eating and doing things like that, and taking care of our bodies the way we needed to, wasn't thinking evil thoughts and creating biological chemical warfare or whatever, you know what I mean? If we wasn't doing those things, these things wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. It's that simple. There's a specific reason why these things exist. You know what I mean? And you can't blame God for it. And I'm not saying you're doing that. I'm saying that the atheists are asking this question. We shouldn't blame God. What we should do is take some responsibility of our own and realize that everything that we're doing here on the earth ain't necessarily willy-nilly or nice or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's the thing. That's the human condition. I think what you're mentioning is all fall short of the glory of God. So we all sin, and the wages of sin is death. And so a lot of people can't understand why. I mean, everybody, who did I hear this morning say this stuff? I think it was John MacArthur I was listening to. I think that was who it was. But he was just,
Grace to you.
What's that?
Grace to You is his show.
Oh, yeah. That's what, but he was just talking about, the human condition, and we all die. And so we all die at some point. God knows the date. We don't know the date. We don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. And right now, the thing that's stressing Americans out, and probably people all over the world who've encountered this coronavirus, what's stressing people out is we don't know what tomorrow's going to be like. You know, we don't know if we're going to be on lockdown for a week or 2 weeks or a month. I mean, no one's telling us because they don't know. And so the not knowing is really crazy. But the one thing we do know, and this is actually what MacArthur said, is we know we're going to die one day. We're guaranteed of that. And so with a Christian perspective is we also know that once we do die, that there is an afterlife. This is just temporary. And that's the thing that I think people maybe don't appreciate, because imagine the next life. We're told that all the tears will be wiped away. It'll be heaven. It's New Jerusalem. It's going to be just an amazing place. And it'll be like the Garden of Eden.
No more pain, no more suffering, no more illnesses, no more viruses, no more none of that. Streets made of gold. You know what I mean? Christ is going to be our light. You know what I mean? Everything's going to be great.
But you know, oh, it just reminds me, I want to say something really quickly. I'm going to put this, let me just find where I put this, but I found a quote from Helen Keller. You know who Helen Keller is, right?
Yeah.
She was an author. She wrote a book, and she was basically blind and deaf.
Okay.
So, and I read about her. Apparently when she was first born, she actually had sight, and she was not deaf, but it got some disease and unfortunately became blind and deaf. And one of the things about her is she's just a beautiful person, number one, but she said, let me just read her quote, because I think you're going to love this. Hold on one second. I'm trying to find where I posted
and
it.
while she's looking for the quote, let me remind everybody, this is S.J. Thomason's YouTube channel, and please subscribe if you're not subscribed. Hit the notification bell and hit all so that you can know when SJ is uploading a YouTube video. And also subscribe to the G-Man channel if you're not subscribed to that channel, and catch the G Podcast on Monday at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. And not even the coronavirus will stop me from doing my show. That is a promise.
Yeah, that's a good point. Definitely subscribe to G-Man. So here's what Helen Keller said. She said, character cannot be developed in ease and quiet. Only through the experience of trial and suffering can the soul be strengthened, vision cleared, ambition inspired, and success achieved. Isn't that beautiful?
It's very beautiful.
And the other thing about Helen Keller was when she was blind, she said that she found like she said inside her mind, you know, even though she couldn't see anything in the outside world, but inside her mind, she said she could see all kinds of things, all sorts of activities, and you know, trees and flowers and lights and all kinds of stuff like that. And she said she could also feel God's presence. And she said, in fact, when she was introduced to Christianity, she said, I always knew there was something there. I just didn't know who, you know, the name. And so she was introduced to, I mean, her father was Presbyterian, but apparently she came to Christianity more through a teacher. And so the teacher brought her in, and she said she always sensed God. And I think sometimes you think when you're, you know, here's a blind person who's deaf, who actually can feel God, because all of these distractions that are blocking our view sometimes aren't there.
Yep. And then, you know, she could have been the opposite. She could have been like, you know, God exists, and why am I blind? Why can't I see? Why won't he just instantly heal my sight? But you want to know what? She had the right perspective. And honestly and truthfully, sometimes, you know, and I give God thanks for my sight and everything, but some of these blind people can see better than us who have nothing wrong with our vision. They can see a lot better. They can hear better. They have better senses. You know what I mean? And they can sense the presence of God sometimes better than us.
Yeah.
You know,
I think it's truly amazing. And so, and I was reading another story about a guy who, which book was this in? It was in a book I was just reading, but there was a guy who went blind, and they used to use him when they were doing job interviews in this company, because he had this amazing sense of discernment where he could discern a good character or a bad character. And he always hired, in almost all cases, he hired the right person, except I guess one time he didn't have a good feeling about this person. They hired him anyway, and it turned out to be a huge mistake. So he just had this amazing sense of discernment. And I think sometimes when you know, this whole idea of blindness is pretty amazing in some ways. So
Amen.
I want to say hi to everybody in the chat here. I see Gavin and Jordan and John and Andy, Jesse Camping. So hi, everybody who's in the chat right now.
Some of my people are here too.
Definitely go. Yeah,
Cool.
Definitely subscribe to G-Man if you haven't done it yet. You can find him. You put out videos daily, don't you?
Not lately, I haven't, but because of this corona, I'm definitely going to be putting out videos off the now. YouTube's been boring since I've been over here, but things are about to pick up. That's a promise.
Good. Yeah, you should. And I am too. My school has gone online. 5 people at my university have coronavirus.
Wow, I'm sorry to hear that. I hope that they recover.
I do too. And four of them, they're all
At your
students
university?
at my university. Yeah, four of them were traveling together at spring break. And so I suspect maybe they were like all those people on the beaches. Have you heard about the people on the beaches?
Uh-uh.
So these people on the beaches are getting way too close to each other. They're completely ignoring the coronavirus. And our governors had to close down Clearwater and Miami because the spring breakers there were just completely ignoring things. And I don't know if that's what the four students were. I don't even know their names because they didn't get named. But they were all together at spring break. And they were with other UT students too. So unfortunately, it might even spread to those students too, and then maybe to their families. I mean, this
Were
is
they
just
in your classroom at all? Like,
I don't know. Well, I think they got it over the spring break. So, and then we didn't go back to class after spring break. I haven't been into class since March, I don't know, 7th or so. I got to look at the dates, but
let me ask you a question because have you ever heard somebody come to you and say, well, if God exists and he's all good, then why does HIV exist? Have you ever heard anybody ever like come to you and ask you that regarding HIV?
they haven't asked me about HIV, but what, I mean, that's just another terrible disease. Actually, before you go on with that, I want to say one quick thing. I saw on the cover of Bloomberg Business Week a picture of a man who apparently was the one who came up with the treatment for HIV. He's completely shifted gears, and right now he's focusing completely on the coronavirus. So it's a good thing to be
Excellent.
working on it.
Very good, very good. The reason why I'm asking you about the about HIV because I think it's universally accepted that HIV was created in the laboratory. You know what I mean? So they should never ask a question like that because at that particular point we shouldn't be asking why does God allow it. We should be wondering why science created it.
You think science created? Because I thought that came out of monkeys.
No, I think that came out of a
Some-
laboratory, and I believe, and I think it was a way to control the population. That's my own personal opinion.
You know, I have to say, I did suspect with China a little bit with that. At first, I did sort of get into the conspiracy idea just because I was looking at China, thinking to myself, you know, they had this one child policy. They're trying to reduce the number of people they have. And that's why people came up with that theory with China, is because they thought if they had the one child policy, they care about reducing their population, they're overpopulated, and maybe they would do something just that nasty to themselves because they're kind of, I mean, the government there is very tough on the people. A lot of crackdowns on Christians there too, by the way.
Oh, they're terrible with Christians. They'll throw you in a camp real quick and try to re-educate you and go, there's no God, worship the emperor.
Yeah, only 19. In fact, I saw a study by the World Value Surveys. Only 19% of people admit, and I just say admit because they're not really allowed to do this, but 19% admit that there is a God. The rest of the people, 81%, say that they're atheists in this one survey that I saw, which is probably because they're afraid to worship, because even, you know, Muslims also get terrorized over there.
That's why I don't even, well, you know what? China better be careful with that, because if Islam ever decides they want to stop messing with America and want to deal with China, they're going to find out that they shouldn't be doing that kind of stuff, because they don't care, man. They'll go over there and blow themselves up in the middle of their government meetings or whatever. You know what I mean? Boom. You know.
Yeah.
But again, if you're an atheist and you're watching this and you're asking, you know, your God can't be all good if coronavirus exists, just understand that if he has a logical reason or a good reason for allowing it to exist and allowing people to catch it, then you can't call it evil. And if he has a moral reason for allowing it to happen, you can't automatically call it evil. What you should do is do a little bit of homework, think a little bit, and ask, why would a God allow something like this to exist? Just like, why would God allow the devil to exist? And I'll take it a step further. You don't believe in Jesus Christ, you atheist. Why does God allow you to exist? Because remember, you're saying that God should just destroy the devil and evil will be gone. No. It's not this. It's not this just that simple. You're an atheist. You don't believe that Christ exists, and you're an enemy of the cross. If he gets rid of the devil, he has to get rid of you too. You know what I mean? That's how you know they haven't taken time out to think about these things.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And so, so why does all this kind of stuff exist? Why do we see evil in the world? Again, what is the atheist answer to that? If there's no God, there's no greater purpose, there's no meaning, there's no explanation of our origins, our objective morality, or anything, or the fact that we suffer. We've got Jesus offered us an explanation of suffering. Then what is your explanation for all this? We're just cosmic accidents.
And coronavirus isn't even evil to most atheists. Even the one standing behind me believes, you know what, Shannon Q. Even the one behind me believes that morality is subjective. You know what I mean? That there's no such thing as good and evil. You know what I mean? That morality is whatever you want it to be. And again, like we said in the beginning of this, the moment you say the coronavirus is evil, the moment you say that, then you're saying from an objective moral worldview that absolute good and absolute evil exists. If absolute good and evil exists, and guess who else exists? God exists.
Yeah. Yeah. No, so absolutely. That's a good point. And God has morally sufficient reasons for doing what he does because he can see the past, present, and future. He's concurrently in it. He's got the vision to know what's going to maximize the potential for people to get into heaven.
Exactly. I'm gonna have to change my background a little bit because it's messing up. So I gotta find somebody.
Your background's funny. If Shannon Q happens to watch this, hi Shannon. Thank you for letting Shannon's been on my channel before, and actually you and I met because you did a debate with Shannon on the Modern Day Debate.
Yeah.
And so that's how we met, and I thought you did a good job. It was a good debate. You know, you held your own for sure. She's actually a tough one to have a conversation with. She's a sophisticated woman. She's got some interesting opinions, a psychology background, and so that's, you definitely held your own. So
sometimes I feel like I'm in the middle of therapy sometimes when I'm talking to her. So it's
you've
like
got Aaron Ra now.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to put somebody else here because we can't get his full face. So Skylar, welcome to SJ Thomas's YouTube channel. Skylar, one hit pony. Why does God allow the babies to suffer? Here comes Skylar Fiction, ladies and gentlemen. You can't show his whole face because I'm sitting in front of him though. Although y'all gonna love when I move and I got my green screen behind me, I'm gonna be able to walk around. You're gonna be able to see this guy all the time.
Are you gonna put Skylar in there?
He's right there.
Oh, I see. Okay, because I'm watching the other screen, so I still have your Aaron Ra video or your Aaron Ra picture. Yeah, that is hilarious.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, Skylar, actually, here's what I'm thinking. G-Man, did you see if you watched one of his last videos, he's made one since then, but he made a video that says he was going to be off of the internet for like a month or off of
that video. I saw it. Yeah, he made an announcement. He's going to be off of YouTube for a little bit. Yeah.
So because I want to comment on that. If he watches this, he's going to find this funny because we're talking about him. But I was thinking now, just let me throw this out there. I was thinking that maybe Skylar is starting to move away from atheism, and because he said he wanted to talk about things like politics and stuff like that instead of talking about religion so much. So I was thinking, what if Skylar is suddenly having these thoughts about Christianity?
Hopefully he is. He's talked to enough of us now to realize how he sounds. You know what I mean? It's time for him to, to confess the Lord Jesus, believe in his heart that God rose up from the dead. He probably already believes those things. He's just too scared of getting cyberbullied. Some people are like that,
That's true. And so he kind of is moving away from the internet. I mean, just throwing it out there. The other person that I think is interesting is his sidekick, Digital Hammurabi, Dr. Josh, because Dr. Josh also told me, he said, because he studied the Old Testament because he's an Assyriologist, and he studied the Old Testament, but he hadn't really looked into the New Testament. So I sort of challenged him. I said, go ahead and, if you look into the New Testament. And so he got on Twitter and he said that he was going to go ahead and look at all the evidence for Jesus' resurrection and that kind of stuff. And so I thought, and then suddenly he hasn't really been saying too much online either.
I would love to let him be a guest in here and we can talk to him without Skylar being present. Because the problem with Skylar is Skylar likes to gish gallop and he likes to like fire hose you with like 90 questions and then give you 10 seconds to answer all of it. You know what I mean? So, all that is a clear sign that he knows he's about to get his butt handed to him. So, I would love to get a two-on-one conversation with Dr. Josh.
Yeah, I would have both of them on actually if they wanted to get on. I'd like to find out if they've done the full investigation of Jesus' resurrection because I think we have plenty of evidence for that.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I don't think he'll survive the two of us. Definitely not you. And if I'm in a room, he's in trouble. So,
I think the two of us could bring, we could go on the Modern Day Debate sometime and even do that. But I like that. I think the idea of moderated debates where you have time to be able to get your point out so you don't get interrupted. I think that's pretty important.
It's very important. And recently I should I say this in public? Okay, I'll say it in public. Okay, recently I kind of criticized James a little bit first of all, I congratulated him on the growth of his YouTube channel because what he's doing right now is awesome and is needed to bring the communities together to stop all of the fighting and everything and whatnot. We got a neutral place we can go to where he's not going to get in the middle of it and allow us to debate and everything. I complimented him on that and I wished him well on that. It's just the issue sometimes with with atheists interrupting us all the time. But like I said, I had a great conversation with him about that. I understand why he allows things on here and whatnot. But like I said, we have other platforms that we can debate on too. You know what I mean? Like I'm trying to encourage other people to, allow us to go on their platforms, especially if it's a Christian versus a Christian, because God knows there's some Calvinists on here. I want to debate on some issues. You know what I mean? Like for example, on your channel, I debated RCC apologists, right?
Yeah.
On the issue of a second Corinthians chapter 4, verse 4.
Yeah, I'll host debates on my channel anytime. So
yeah, if
Yeah,
anybody wants to come on here and debate me, SJ will moderate.
sure, absolutely. And Andy LH doesn't know what he's asking because I'm going to answer it. He probably doesn't expect this, but yes, he says, what evidence for Jesus Christ do I have, SJ? And then G-Man. And then he says, got any relics? So let me go ahead and give you some evidence. And I have personal experience is my main evidence, but beyond personal experience, do we have enough evidence? Well, let's see. We've got fulfilled prophecies. Jesus fulfilled 330 prophecies. And I strongly encourage you to please read Daniel 9, which predicted exactly when Jesus was going to be here to the date. It was basically 77s less 70 after the year 444 BC when the decree went out. So we have that, and that arrived at the year 33, which is the year that Jesus was crucified. We also have Psalm 22, Zechariah 12:10, and Isaiah 53, which spoke of Jesus' crucifixion and his resurrection. It alluded to the resurrection in Isaiah 53. And so we have that. We have Malachi 3:1 that said that basically there was going to be the anointed one would appear in the second temple. And the second temple was destroyed in the year 70, and Israel was dispersed in the year 70. And so what happened there is that evidence alone gives us a lot of evidence of Jesus. And then, of course, the biggest one. So we know that when he died, on the day he died and was crucified, his apostles, his male apostles, except for John, all went into hiding. And so the big question is, why did they come out? Well, they came out because the women announced that the empty tomb was there, and they discovered the risen Jesus and spent time with him over 40 days. And then for the rest of their lives, for many decades, they were jailed, beaten, stoned, and eventually martyred in gory ways. And so why would they do that? Because these people had knowledge of the truth. People don't die for something that they feels a lie, but they had knowledge of the truth. They were in a position to know whether or not what they were saying was actually true. And so that is my evidence for Jesus. And I have a lot more, but that's just a little starter. So.
Well, I'll give them something. And I know one of the weaknesses of the atheist community is history. They don't even give you the rules of historicity to determine whether or not a person existed or not. So I would put the burden on Andy to be able to tell me, like what are the rules of historicity to determine whether or not a person is a historical person or not? When you do that, then I got a question for you. What happened in 70 AD historically in the nation of Israel? Who was the Roman ruler during that particular time? Okay. And can you please explain to me the Jewish diaspora? If you can't do that, don't ask me, do I have proof for Jesus? Because the moment you start opening up your mouth and you say, oh, everybody knows it was the Roman, what was the Romans, Tiberius, I think it was, and it was a 3 or 4 year war between Israel and the Roman Empire, and the Israel lost. The temple was destroyed in 70 AD, and then they were brought over to Egypt, and Egypt didn't want them, and they were dispersed throughout the world. The moment you start saying that, then I'm going to point to what Jesus said in Matthew 24, and the conversation's over. I will prophecy is my answer. You know what I mean? So there's nothing to talk about. But again, it's one of the biggest weaknesses of the atheist community. They don't know a lot about history. That's why they're questioning whether or not he existed or not.
You know, another very good piece of evidence is Israel itself. So no other nation has been resurrected, if you want to call it that. So after 1,878 years in 1948, Israel suddenly resurrected, and in fulfillment of what was mentioned in the book of Daniel and Revelation, where we know that there is Israel and Jerusalem, they are present at the end of the world. And so 1948, it came back. In fact, the Jewish language also was resurrected in the 1800s with a man who decided that he was going to try to bring that back. And so we're seeing a lot of things playing out these days. And so, yeah, like somebody said here, birth pangs, we're seeing those birth pangs. That's not to say we might have a year, we might have 100 years, you never know. But we do now have Israel back. That's a pretty good sign that something is going to happen.
For a very long time, that wasn't even Israel. It was just a property of Palestine. You know what I mean? And I think it was owned by the British over there in the UK or something like that. You know what I mean? And then World War II happened. The Jews, the Holocaust happened, And out of that, God used that whole that whole thing that happened in World War II to make Israel a state again. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
A lot of people to this very day arguing that that's not fulfilled Bible prophecy, that there are strangers and the wrong people living there. I say this, I say that the Bible is correct when God said that he would take people from all these different lands and bring them back to their land. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Israel is a state again. And if you want to know where we are in the calendar for Bible prophecy, don't look at America and the coronavirus, look at the nation of Israel, and you'll know exactly where we are on the calendar.
Yes, exactly. And so the big challenge is what we also know is there's going to be a third temple. And there are people in Israel. I've actually gone online and I've seen Netanyahu actually make mention of this even on a YouTube video, but they're talking about building a third temple. Now we also know that the Antichrist is supposed to appear in this third temple, the abomination of desolation.
And say that he is God and show himself that he is God. And when that happens, that's when the Jews are going to realize we crucified our real Messiah more than 2,000 years ago, and it's going to be pew pew. You're going to get as far away from that guy as possible.
Yeah.
You know? So
Yeah. That guy, here's what, and I don't know if you and I have talked about this, but what's really interesting is if you look in the Muslim books, their Antichrist is our Christ. And our Antichrist is their, you know what I'm saying? So they
yep.
actually, the Antichrist that's described in our book is what they call the Mahdi. Mehdi is I believe it's spelled, or maybe it's Mahdi, but it's this Mahdi, and it's this person who comes back and is supposedly superior to Jesus and has Jesus bow down to him. And so that's what is written in their book.
Yeah, and that's why if you're in Islam, you need to get out right now, because you got a prophet that never made any prophecies, and you got some really poor writing going on with the Quran. I'm sorry. You know,
I did hear
so,
something, Susan, who's called Slam RN, you see her in here sometimes. I don't think she's in here today, but Slam RN sent me a video that was pretty interesting. I just have a little more evidence that's internal. One of the things that people talk about in the Bible are the undesigned coincidences between the Gospels and the book of Acts and the other books. But one of the things that was mentioned in this video that I'd never heard was this idea of in the Mark book, in Mark 14, apparently there are, when he wrote it in Greek, but at some parts, apparently he writes it in a really fluid Greek. And then in other parts, he writes it in kind of a really like low level Greek in Mark 14. And so the idea is, well, why was he writing this low level Greek? Is because they felt like the low level portions of Mark 14 were actually Mark translating probably what had been given to him in maybe Aramaic or another language. And so it's because the translation's a little bit poor that the Greek starts sounding poor. And so that means that there was information that was prior to Mark that people had memorized out there. And so there are some other creeds besides of course, 1 Corinthians 15, which is a pretty amazing early creed in more support of Jesus. I mean, there's so much support. G-Man, I don't even know how people can go about denying all this stuff. They can't explain why the apostles did what they did.
There's a reason why in 1 Corinthians it says that God uses the foolishness of preaching that men are going to be saved. And in Romans chapter, Romans 10, it talks about like how God sends people out there to preach the gospel. Like, how are they going to hear unless somebody is sent? How is somebody going to go unless, whatever, you know what I mean? It's by the foolishness of preaching that people are going to be saved. The point of asking you all these questions, SJ, and for the Christians that are watching this, is to get you to doubt your faith. That is the whole point. It's not so that they can gain knowledge and come to the conclusion that God exists. You want them to get saved. Preach the gospel to them.
Yeah, no, there's a guy who's on Twitter who's called Prophet X, and he was an atheist, and I met him a few years ago, and he was always sending me like nasty messages, and I'd block him periodically, then I'd unblock him because I'd had to actually talk to him on the phone one time, and I'd block him, unblock him, and then finally one day he changes his name. Like, he's had different names on there. He's called Stony Weasel and different names like that, and his real name's Marcus, but he suddenly comes around and now is a full-blown Christian. And he said he just realizes, he said one of the things about me that really bothered him was because I refused to give up. Like, I'm not going to just go out there and say, oh gosh, I'm throwing in the towel, I'm not going to believe anymore, because I refuse. I've been given personal evidence. Now I see there's a ton of evidence out there, extra biblically and biblically, and I think to myself, well, I mean, it's there. You can't just take that back. The more I learn, the more I know it's true. So
I gotta say this about providing evidence to an atheist and whether or not God exists. And I tried doing to a bionic dance, and I think some people got it and understood what I was trying to do. I know you did, but there's a difference between a person who sincerely wants to look at the historical evidence that we have for Jesus, for the resurrection, and any other biblical proofs that we have. And then then there comes a time, because Jesus told his disciples that if they want to hear what you have to say, that you wipe the dust off their feet, right? Wipe the dust off your feet, and then go to the next town or whatever. This is why I appreciate the presuppositional argument. See, I use both. I use the evidential argument, and I use a form of the presuppositional argument. I'll show them evidence to a certain degree. But if all they keep doing is gish galloping and asking another question after another question, and it doesn't even make sense. Like, for example, actually, I was talking to one atheist, right? It was like, oh, I'm not going to become a Christian because on the Sabbath day, Moses and the Israelites stoned somebody for picking up sticks on the Sabbath. What the heck does that got to do with you not wanting to be a Christian and you wanting to be and you being forgiven of your sins? There's nothing to do with that whatsoever. At that point, he's just trying to get me to doubt my faith. So what I would do with a person like that, I'm like, look, I've come to the conclusion that you already know that God exists according to Romans chapter 1. You're just suppressing the truth about God and unrighteousness. You know what I mean? And then I'll say, well, you're just saying that. I said, no, I'm not. Why haven't you approached God by faith? And you already know how the conversation goes. Oh, I'm an pessimist. I don't believe in faith. I believe that we have a logical explanation for everything. Like, what?
Yeah. I mean, all the reasons that we just gave, the origins, meaning, morality, destiny, there's so many reasons to believe besides personal experience. I mean, you go into any church and ask them, why do you believe in Jesus? A lot of people are saying, my personal experience. Now, the argument against that is somebody would say, well, what if a Hindu says he or she had a personal experience? Well, my Hindu neighbor at my school actually has two people around him he loves who are dying of cancer, unfortunately. And he came in my office and asked me to pray to Jesus for his people. So I would find that kind of interesting. So
yeah.
But the other
it's
thing,
usually during a tragedy where even a non-believer will actually say, you know what, let me explore this praying thing and talk to God, because nothing else is working. And that's why we pray as Christians. A lot of times when we're asking God for something, it's usually because I can't get it myself. If I knew for a certainty, SJ, that I can contact you and say, SJ, can you send me a $1 what is it, a $1 cash app or whatever? You know what I mean? I would never go to God and be like, Lord, I need $1. You know what I mean? The only time I'm going to go to God about needing $1 is when I've basically asked everybody else and nobody has it. You know what I mean? I really, 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 really need it. That way, when he provides the $1 after I went to everybody else and I couldn't get it, including rich people, and they didn't have it, just a silly example. And God does it. He just did a miracle in my life and it strengthened my faith. You know what I mean? But it's usually during a tough time or a tragedy or whatever. You might be sick, took every medicine out there, went to the doctor, they gave up on you, you pray, and now all of a sudden you're well. You know what I mean? It's usually when we go through a catastrophe or something.
There are a lot of people like that. And that speaks to this whole coronavirus thing too. I bet you a lot of people with the coronavirus are saying many more prayers than maybe they've ever said in their lives.
Exactly. And guess what? They're wiping the dust off their Bibles, they're reading it. They're calling their old pastors who they haven't talked to in like in 8 years. You know what I mean? They're talking to God. They're asking people to pray for them now. And those people might be atheists and don't want to admit it that they're doing these things. You know what I mean? So when things like this go on, this is when we start seeking after God and asking him to help us. When things are good, usually a lot of things don't happen.
Yeah. That's the thing. If you look at this whole movement, it's actually going to what you're saying. Look at where the virus has spread mainly in places where there's a lot of wealth, if you've noticed that. So the virus is spreading in places, especially when, Western, Northern Europe, it's all over the place there, all over Europe, actually, Italy, there's a lot of wealth there. There's a lot of wealth in the United States, Canada. So the virus it's in Australia too. It's in some places that are westernized cultures where there's a lot of wealth. And those same cultures have been gravitating towards atheism. Now, could it be possible that this is God's megaphone saying, wake up, take a pause, take a chill, spend time with your family, and remember, I'm your Lord.
It might be atheists go like this one. It might be God dropping an atomic bomb on the atheist community, because to think about it, for years, they've been on here mocking him, saying that he's not real, saying he's using boing magic. You know what I mean? They've been disrespecting him. And now God's like, okay, I'm going to allow this coronavirus to specifically affect you.
Yeah, starting from the atheist China. So starting from atheist China and spreading all over. I mean, it's kind of interesting to think about.
Chinese emperor to save you from your coronaviruses. He ain't going to be able to help you. There's one
Yeah.
person who can, and his name is Jesus.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. So that's really actually kind of interesting. So what does this say? Andy LHSJ broke down one after another. You just want to be a rebel. That's on you, dude.
Oh, I want to be a rebel.
No. This is Andy wants to be a rebel. The Andy who's in the chat.
Oh, okay. All right.
So yeah, no, I think that's something that's pretty interesting. And I think I mean, another thing that we should think about is again ways that this is also going to encourage people to go out and think about others and feel other people in need. When you've got, let me give you some numbers: 97, or actually it's 99.7% of businesses in the United States are small businesses. Okay. And so the small businesses, and we've got about 40 million people who are in businesses of 100 or less people, and about 20 million businesses who have less than 20 people businesses. Okay. So there's these really small businesses. These are the ones that are going to get hurt. And I think in these kind of times, people are trying to figure out, how are they going to pay their payroll? How are they going to make payroll if they're not making any income?
Actually, you're a Christian. You're not supposed to know that. We're supposed to be stupid. You're not supposed to know that. Somebody's gonna make a YouTube video and go, well, actually, guys, see, this college professor ain't so smart. She got it wrong by a half of 1%. You see, she don't know everything. You see, I got you, SJ. Somebody's making a video doing that. You'll see.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, there was that's so that I mean that's a lot of
an excellent time to get AdSense on YouTube. You know what I mean? Where you can put out content, make money here on YouTube.
That's what I told.
Get donations.
Yeah. Well, I even told the patio business, I told him, I said, my gosh, get a Google ad going. I mean, you've got to get an online business going because there's a good chance that Florida's going to be shut down like these 5 other states. So it's scary out there right now. And it's scary for students. A lot of people are under a lot of stress. Anyone who's in the hospitality industry, and that's a huge industry, is pretty much wiped out. I mean, if you work on cruise ships, can you imagine? They've already been wiped out the past few weeks.
They got to find something soon, or it's going to be more than the economy. It's like I said, it's going to be the apocalypse. And I'm not talking about like when Christ returns and and judges everybody. I'm talking about like everything that our life as we know it is going to completely go. Yeah. That's why I think in a week or two is all going to end. I think the one thing that's dominating everybody today is fear. If you're a Christian, you really don't have anything to fear. Number one, you're not going anywhere until God tells you to go. This is the promise that we have. You know what I mean? Our days are numbered. You know what I mean? And God knows when you're going to be born, and He knows when you're going to die. Okay, so I don't care what a doctor tells you. Oh, you got about 2 weeks to live. If God says you're going to live 10 more years, you're going to live 10 more years. Mm-hmm. Walk in that. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and whatever you're worrying about, God will provide for you. You know what I mean? This is the time for us to show people that it's Jesus first and everybody else second, and we're going to be obedient to Him. And I talked about this on GTV and on my main account and everything. That this is an excellent time to show people our faith, because we can win a lot of people to Christ on that alone. Don't be afraid like everybody else is. Be like, listen, I'm not worried about it. I'm not going nowhere until God tells me it's time to go.
You're right. After
that, it's okay.
This actually reminds me, this whole coronavirus thing, I was just thinking again with the churches. So our church this morning made a pretty big announcement where a lot of people in our church, I mean, I live in a kind of an affluent neighborhood, a pretty nice neighborhood. It's like I don't know what's called middle class or upper middle class or something like that. But it's a pretty decent neighborhood where a lot of people have, 2 cars and some extra money. And so a lot of people are giving to the church. And the church actually made an announcement and said, listen, if anyone is in trouble, come to us. We can give out food. We're going to give out all this stuff. They've got a lot of money and people are going to give money back. And so the churches that have been losing attendance all over Europe and in the United States, maybe we'll get a little bit more attention from people when they start suffering. I mean, you guys, if you're in the crowd right now and you're listening and you're thinking to yourself, geez, I don't know if I'm going to have food tomorrow, go to your church, go back. And just walk in. You don't have to necessarily walk all the way up the steps and say, I accept Jesus as my Lord and Savior. But go on that first step. Just go into service, start going to the services, and see if you can be a person who takes some of that stuff from the church, because a lot of people are giving too. They want people to take from too.
That's one thing I love about Jesus. You know what I mean? Even if a person doesn't accept Him, He ain't gonna see you hungry. He'll feed you. You know what I mean? He'll provide for your basic needs. And that's one thing about Christianity that nobody can say anything about. Nothing about. Jesus fed a crowd of 4,000 or 5,000 people with a couple of loaves of bread and some fish, simply because they followed him around.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
so I
Well,
absolutely love
even
Christianity for that.
that's another thing that people can think about as another argument for Christianity is the idea that his apostles, while he was ministering to them, a lot of times they had doubts. And there was one time when he was in a boat with the apostles and they had been fishing all day and or they were coming back from fishing all day and they hadn't caught a thing. And Peter was really down and they were bummed out. And Jesus said, well, just go out there and throw the net right over there. And Peter's like, no, dude, you don't know. We didn't catch anything. There's no fish out here. So just throw the net in there. So it's like, have a little bit of faith in me and I will provide. And so they threw the net into the water and pulled out 153 fish. And so there's some pretty neat stuff.
Yep.
So there's
As a
just
matter of
lots
fact,
of
didn't the
good.
net almost break? I think the net almost
Yeah.
broke in that text. Yeah.
Yeah, you know that one.
Yeah, the net almost broke. And he was like, wow. You know what I mean? And then Peter was like, oh, Lord, oh, I'm a sinner. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
just demonstrated who he was. He didn't have to tell nobody who he was. Once he did stuff like that, you knew who he was around.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Just the evidence from Peter, James, Jesus's half brother, and Paul, just the evidence from those three alone also gives us Jesus proof. So the idea that James, his half brother, tried to stop his ministry, Paul was persecuting Christians, breathing out blasphemous words about Jesus and the Christians and the way. And then you had Peter, who was denying Jesus 3 times during his crucifixion. These 3 people all completely turned around and ended up being martyred in gory ways, but they preached for him for decades saying, wait a second, no, I've seen the risen Jesus. I've seen the risen Jesus. I mean, why would these people do this if they hadn't seen the risen Jesus? If they were purposely trying to fabricate something, well, you don't fabricate things that end you in jail or beheaded or crucified upside down. It just doesn't make sense. So Andy,
Let me ask you a question.
Sorry, you're off.
Let me ask you a question. Why do you think, and I have my own answer for this, but I want to hear yours for this specifically. Why do you believe a person like a Bionic Dance or Aaron Ra or somebody won't even allow us to even use the Bible to try to prove our proposition? Like, I'm talking about like the real reasons, not the rehashed, repeated nonsense that we hear on the Atheist Experience. Like, why do you believe a Bionic Dancer or Aaron Ra or one of these atheists don't even like it when we use the Bible to try to prove that God exists?
Yeah, they don't want us to use the Bible because they think that the people who wrote the Bible were colluding to write some, garbage, basically, that they don't think is true. They think that people were, just out there trying to make money, but that clearly isn't the case in early Christianity. You have no evidence that people were getting any sort of material gains from the Bible. So why would they collude to write something false? Instead, what happened is they wrote the truth, and they write stuff that's kind of embarrassing in the Bible. I mean, just the fact that Peter denied Jesus 3 times, that's embarrassing. If they were trying to tell a lie, why wouldn't they make it sound like, everyone was elevating Jesus the entire time, and then at the end, they always had faith, they never ran off? Why would they do that? Instead, we see even his brothers were trying to stop his ministry.
Exactly.
So,
I think that the reason, and I'm going to add to what you said, because I agree with you. I think that they think that the Bible was colluded and that one person wrote it, and and things like that. And when anybody who's actually read it knows better, or if read it casually knows better. Anybody who's actually studied this knows better. Been to school and studied it that way knows better. I personally think they do it because a lot of them haven't read it, and a lot of them don't know how to navigate through this the way we do. Like, SJ, you would come across as being very intimidating to several atheists in the community regarding the resurrection, regarding the persecution of the church, and certain other topics that I notice that you're really good at. You know what I mean? You would come across as being very intimidating to a lot of them because they don't know a whole lot about it. They have to go to places like evilbible.com to get their arguments. They have to go to listen to Matt Dillahunty or this person over here. There's literally a website called evilbible.com. And all of the arguments that they make, all of them, literally all of them are on that site.
wow.
And anybody can go on there, write down a couple of arguments, and then come on here and sound like some type of scholar. But when you make them dig, you start finding out that they don't really know nothing about it at all.
Yeah. Well, here's here's an example of one of the things that they come up with in those kind of websites, or Rational Wiki, or these other places where they go to get their information. Is they'll say, well, geez, this is a quote from them. There's no contemporaneous sources in the Bible of Jesus. And it's like, well, are you just not reading the same Bible I'm reading? Because we have Matthew and John, okay, who are his apostles. We also have Peter, James, Paul. We have all these people who were contemporaneous to Jesus's life. Okay, so they were all walking around and interacting with people who had seen the risen Jesus, whether or not they saw him themselves, like Luke and Mark. Mark is a good friend of Peter. Luke is a good friend of Paul. They all traveled together. So we've got independent attestations of the truth. And all you need for an historically reliable document is to have two sources. And we have actually 42 different sources within 150 years that attest to the New Testament, including 33 Christian sources. Some are the church fathers and that sort of thing. And then we have 9 secular sources that also offer support of the New Testament. And so when we have all this kind of stuff, when we only needed 2, we've got a lot. And so people wake up. I mean, the Bible's got 1,500 years worth of information. It's written over 1,500 years. It's written by over 40 authors in 3 continents and 3 languages. We've got a lot of independent attestation. We've got prophecies that were fulfilled that you couldn't have possibly fulfilled. I've seen the odds on that. It's something like 1 in 10 to the 120th power, some crazy number. But
I said this to you.
I might be
private.
wrong with that number. I'll double check that number. So
I said this to you in private. I'm gonna say this to you in public. I love what you did to Jim Majors. Jim Majors was like, well, I will believe it if you can give me a person who was a non-believer who actually came to. I was like, wait a minute. And then immediately you said, well, somebody did do it. His name was Saul. He later became Paul. He was actually holding the coat to the people that was persecuting other Christians. They were stoning them to death. And then he had an encounter with the living God. I mean, with Jesus himself. He says, Saul, Saul, why have you persecuted me? He on the road to Damascus.
He opened it up for me to say that. I was so happy when he said that, because I was like, I love the story of Paul. That actually, when I first learned that, I didn't even realize all that kind of stuff up until about 2012, 2013. When I first learned that, I was so impressed with that story. And I remember sitting at a party, friends of ours, we were over at their house and they were having this party. And I was sitting next to this guy that he was a friend of a friend, and he's Jewish. And I started telling him about Saul. And he's like, are you serious? That's in there? I'm like, yeah, you really have to go look at it. I was working this Jewish guy. And then I went and I got Dr. Michael Brown's book on the stuff that you can give to Jewish people to bring them to Christianity. It's like answering objections to Jewish information. I was listening to Mike Winger and Dr. Michael Brown stuff today. They had a really good video together on that. But I have Jewish people I'm secretly working on, like, if I get them to read Isaiah 53, I think it's a game changer.
You ever thought about getting Matt Slick on your channel?
Oh, I would have Matt Slick on. Yeah. No, I haven't thought about it, but I would definitely have him on. Do you have connections to him?
Veckel's met him in person. Veckel has connections, so I know him through Veckel. So, and I actually have a lot of, I'm not a Calvinist, but I respect his style on how he goes about doing his apologetics. So I love me some Matt Slick. And me and him would disagree when it comes to the tulip, but as far as everything else goes, me and him are fine.
Yeah, I'd like to have him on. I think, if I'm not mistaken, didn't I see that he debated Skylar Fiction?
Oh yeah, and all Skylar could do is gish gallop. Like I said, he kept over talking him. Honestly, I think Skylar knows that the only way he can hang with one of us these days is to over talk somebody.
That's the biggest challenge I have. Like, there was the one thing with Jim Majors is I felt like it was hard to get points in, and so I felt like I would be going down a road trying to explain something and he'd interrupt. I was getting a little bit of that. Sorry, Jim, if you're hearing this, but I was getting some of that. So that was making it a little bit tough, which is going to say for next time I get in debate, I'm going to do timed. So I have certain responses I can completely get out without being interrupted.
Yeah, you got to make sure you tell them that, because before I go on modern day debate, I'm like, look, these have got to be the rules. He's going to get like 10 minutes. I'm going to get 10 minutes. And if you want me to answer a question, I have to be allowed to answer it. If I don't answer the first question, I'm one of these people that'd be like, I'm not answering no questions. And they're going to be like, why? Because you didn't even let me answer the first one. So why should I even attempt to answer the second one?
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to set up something. Modern day debate. Actually, James contacted me. He wants to come down here to Tampa and he wants to have me debate somebody. And he was thinking about, who lives down here, if you're a person who's down here in Florida and you want to do a debate, let me know. But I don't want to do it with this coronavirus issue yet. I was thinking I could do it next week or something, but then I thought, I was traveling. I need 14 days of isolation pretty much. So I've been trying to order stuff in if I need anything. So
yeah, try to stay indoors if you can. The worst place to be right now is outside.
Like, I go outside, ride my bike, but it's not like I'm riding by. I mean, I see people and stuff, but it's not.
I'm going to run, like I'm training for a marathon. So
Are you?
I'm going to go, yeah. I'm training for next year, not this year, because I think the coronavirus is going to set me back too far. But I'm going to train because I'm actually going to do one in Pennsylvania. I've done the one in New Jersey like 4 times now. So now I'm either going to do Philly or I'm going to do Scranton for the next marathon. So
That's great.
one of the
Good for you.
benefits of everything I went through a couple of years ago is that I learned that in that particular town they did marathons. So it's either going to be in Scranton or it's going to be in Philly when I do it. So
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Now, Andy in the chat, I just want to mention, please be polite.
Andy, the only one making comments?
No, he's there's other people in the chat, and it's Gavin and Jordan, but Andy, just please try to be what if you saw these people in real life, some of the things that you say you wouldn't say in real life. I'm
Want me to
pretty
block
sure.
Want me to block them?
No, don't. Actually, anyone who's a mod in here, don't block anybody. I don't mind if people come in and they want to express
All right.
views. Just don't go and try to slam other people and say things like, butt hurt and that kind of
But
thing.
if he starts calling you names and start calling you things out of your name, then do we block him?
Yeah, no, don't block them. I'll block anyone. I can block them on my thing if I need to block anybody. I think I've got a couple people blocked here, and but that was.
What about
because-
timeout? Can we put him in timeout if he's disrespectful?
Yeah, you can put people in timeout.
Okay,
We've
all
done
right.
that.
You're lucky, Andy. You're lucky because I got a quick trigger finger, man. You're lucky. Because if I was looking at the live chat, she would have been yelled at me about it because I do not get mods and waste it. I will use it. And I got a big reputation here on YouTube for that. I'll throw
You
you.
do. Yeah, so if you're just joining us, please, or you're listening to this now, maybe it's not live for you, but please go to G-Man's channel. I've got a link to it in my description. Actually, I have kind of permanent links in there. So just go to the G-Man's channel and go ahead and like and subscribe his stuff. And subscribe to me, please, if you would. That'd be great too, because we need some subscriptions, trying to get some pretty good numbers and get more attention out there and that kind of good stuff.
Well, you can do super chats now. So if you guys want to ask in the future, if you guys want to say something specifically to me or want to challenge me to a debate, at least give SJ a $10 super chat or something like that, and then I'll talk about actually debating you if anybody wants to give her a $10 super chat today. I mean, I don't think she needs it, but I mean, show some type of respect. Better than a $2 one, you know what I mean? So.
Oh, I don't. I've done $2 super chats before.
What do they give you out of that? They give you like a quarter out of that, or
I
whatever?
get to say like 5 words on a $2 super chat. I've done that on James's channel. I go in there sometimes and I'll get really frustrated with the debate that I'm listening to, so I start super chatting like as much as I can. I'm just like popping questions in there. It's kind of funny.
Everybody can't be aggressive on there. Like one of the things that that the Christian community has an issue with modern day debate is that when Christians go on there, you got to go in there and realize like you're in the lion's den. This ain't the time to be all, kumbaya, my Lord. Let's all hold hands and save the universe. You're going in there engaging in spiritual warfare. You need to act like it, because if you don't, these atheists are going to hand you your butts.
Yeah, I have to say, I have seen some Christians lose in these debates, and it's frustrating. It's like they don't know how to respond. They haven't gone to Atheist 101.
No, you're right.
I mean, I've been spending enough time on Twitter where I've seen their arguments. I think I've got all of them down. And so if you're going to go debate people, Christians, just make sure you've seen their arguments and you know what you're getting into. And so I did have a debate last summer with some guy that I was talking about the health benefits of Christianity, and I pulled out a bunch of meta-analytic studies, and he went and combed through my meta-analytic studies prior to coming in there, and he isolated like these little random sentences to try to pretend like what I was saying wasn't true, and he threw me for a loop because I wasn't expecting that. And I had a computer, my old computer had crashed with all the studies that was in that computer, and I didn't update it. So I was sort of there with like a deer in the headlights, and I decided I'm not going to have that happen again. So now I go in there with my fire.
I got a funny story about getting embarrassed as far as like debating somebody. When I first and I told the story about my testimony and how I got saved a bunch of times on my
Oh wait, I can't hear you, G-Man. Shoot, did I just lose you? Hey, G-Man, you're frozen. Shoot, what happened? G-Man?
That was about it. I mean, don't worry about it.
Oh wait, say it again, because I lost your volume.
Okay, can you see me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we was playing basketball, and it was this Muslim there. And I'm a brand new believer, all zealous with the faith and whatnot. And I had a conversation, and I was like, for God so loved the, and I didn't know the rest of it or whatever. He just stopped me and says, listen to me, man, I know your faith way better than you. Told me about Jesus, told me about the apostles, told me about this, that, and the other. And I didn't know nothing about nothing. I was like, And when we left the basketball court that day, that is the day that God showed me you need to study. And ever since that day, I made it my business to get in this Bible and get to know Jesus on a more intimate level, the apostles, what God wants me to do, what he doesn't want me to do, because I never want to have that happen again. So when I get into these conversations with these atheists, or with a Muslim or a Jehovah's Witness or whatever, I make sure I go in there prepared, because if I don't, I know what's going to happen. They're going to wipe the floor with me. So
Yeah, I think that's one of my new strategies too, is to go is to have everything in a PowerPoint slide. Like with Jim Majors, I had 90 something PowerPoint slides all prepared, so that if I tried to do any response that I had seen that he would possibly come back with, I tried to have backup, just so I have an easy way to quickly get to some information. Like if he was talking about the 9 extra biblical sources that we have within 150 years, I've got quotes from every one of those sources in my slides. And so I wanted to make sure I had as much backup.
It was hilarious. What did he say in the opening statement? He tried to compare you to like Benny Hinn. He had like the white jacket. I was like, that was the worst opening statement I've ever seen in my life.
Actually, it was really kind of funny, because I'm thinking, are you trying to make an argument that because there are bad preachers out there or whatever, because there's Benny Hinn out there, that God doesn't exist? Is this what you're trying to say?
Yeah. That isn't gonna win nobody. I mean, even some of the atheists must have been like facepalm. Oh my God, where does this guy come from? Why is he debating for us? We're looking stupid here. You know, I bet you Bionic Dance would have gave you a better run for your money. You would have beat her, because she just doesn't know what the Bible says about this stuff. But you would have gave her a much better. She would have gave you a better run for your money, though.
I think Bionic Dance, it would be interesting to debate her. I think, I look at, who do you think is the toughest? I mean, not joking around, just a seriously tough debater, a person that really.
Floyd.
Which one?
Floyd.
Floyd?
Yeah, find him and debate him on the resurrection. Now he will give you a run for your money.
Is it Floyd IP?
Yeah, I think it's Floyd. You know what? Contact Veckel, and Veckel will give you his YouTube information.
Oh no, that guy's been trying to get a hold of me. He wants to debate me.
Yeah, debate him on the resurrection, because he tells you he studies, but not to be, to become a believer or find out whether or not God exists. He wants to destroy Christianity. I debated him on whether or not Jesus Christ is going to return, destroyed him. But as far as debating on a resurrection, he would be an interesting debate with you. I would like to see that. I would pay to see that.
I told James when James was talking about setting a debate, and actually I'm going to probably contact James and see if we can do an online debate. But I told him I have 2 favorite subjects. It's the resurrection or objective morality. And so
somebody's got to come up with the concept of pay-per-view, because there are definitely some people here on YouTube that I would definitely pay maybe the same money for WrestleMania to be able to watch 2 people debate. Like, for example, I still want to see Bruce Shepard and Bionic Dance debate, because those 2 are hilarious when they're together. I would like to see you and Floyd. I would pay money for that. I would pay money to see you and Matt Dillahunty. I would pay. I don't care what the price is. I would pay to see it.
Yeah, but Matt Dillahunty's argument, and I was just listening to his argument. Sometimes he sounds pretty good. Like, he actually made a couple of decent points when he was up there against Jordan Peterson. But I think he did a pretty awful job when he was up there with David Wood. I mean, I thought that was kind of, I didn't think that was very good. David made some really good arguments, but there were a couple of points that he made that people were kind of running with, like when he talked about his psychopathy and that kind of stuff. And so the atheists were kind of going nuts about that in the chat. But
I think that was pay to watch me debate Matt Dillahunty.
I would love to see you, Matt. Oh my gosh, that would be a dream. I would love to see that. That would be amazing.
He's the one stopping it. It ain't me. I would debate Dillahunty right now, literally no preparation.
That would be so funny. I would love to see that, G-Man. I'm gonna, you know what I'm gonna do? Can I ask Modern Day Debate? Or I would host it, but Matt will never come on my channel because I've interacted with him in pretty negative ways. Guy does not like me.
I think he likes you to a certain degree, and I think he would talk to you again.
He's blocked me.
You're gonna have to go to Texas to debate him, though.
Yeah, I don't want to go to. I don't.
You know what I want to do? I want to put all of the odds against me and put all of them on him. I want to debate him at the Atheist Experience in person, in studio, with James actually being like
that would be so funny. So no, that no, but Matt's argument. Here's what Matt's argument is. It's basically you give him evidence and he says I'm not convinced. That's his whole thing.
Okay.
You're like, okay, well, here's the evidence for the resurrection: cosmology, teleology, purpose, design, logic, reasoning, aesthetic of apprehension. You give him all of this evidence, and he's at the end, he's like, I'm not convinced. And Mike Licona said something to him like, if you saw the stars all align in the sky that said God exists or Jesus exists written out in the sky, what would you do? And Matt's like, I would think I was seeing things. It's like,
Exactly.
that means there's no
He's denying.
evidence. There's
He's a
nothing that you can give him that can prove it.
Right. So now let's flip the script now. He comes to me with Thunderfoot, Aaron Ra, maybe Scientist Mel, and all of these guys. This is the evidence for evolution. And then I sit there and say, I'm not convinced. Okay. They produce all 4 billion transitional forms. I'm not convinced. They produce some type of machine that lets you go back in time and watch you do the primordial soup, you know what I mean, and how the first living. I'm not convinced. That's me denying reality, and that's what Matt Dillahunty is doing. He's denying reality. If you're saying that if God came down from heaven, held a dead star in his hand, and had a meal with you, and you're telling me that you don't believe that this person is God, you understand what I'm saying? Then he has to be able to explain how can a human being hold a dead star in their hand. He has to be able to explain these things. He's a denialist. He just wants to deny reality. And that's why that's not the way to go at Matt. You got to tell Matt what's going on in his head. Tell him that he knows that God exists and that he's suppressing the truth and unrighteousness. Show people that he's not using logic correctly. Show him that he's not reasoning correctly, and then show him why he's wrong. Matt can get that with some other people, but if you listen to him enough times, I'm telling you, you can destroy that dude. I'm telling you. I can't wait until he finally accepts the challenge from me. I can't wait.
I loved did you see the Glenn Scrivener Matt debate?
The what?
Glenn Scrivener. I had him on my channel not too long ago. And Matt Dillahunty. It was on the Unbelievable channel, Justin Brierley's channel.
You talking about the Matt Dillahunty James Wood debate, or?
No. There was one. It was just a few weeks. It was, I don't remember exactly when. It was maybe a month or two ago, but it was by Glenn Scrivener, Scrivener, and Matt Dillahunty. It was phenomenal because what Matt's been doing is he keeps going to this Gregory S. Paul study. And what it is it's a study with just 2 variables. Okay. So it's trying to talk about, they compared atheism and they compared like health outcomes in Europe, and they didn't control for anything like, financial income or anything like that. And it was, I forget those might've been the variables, or happiness or something like that. And he, so Matt's been using this study that's basically completely illegitimate. Like, as far as I'm concerned, as a person who does statistics, you can't just have 2 variables. It's what they call spurious results, because he didn't explain the results with all of the variables that would have been important to the prediction of the outcome. And so the bottom line is it was a flawed study, and Matt relies on that one left and right in all of these different debates. And so Glenn was waiting for him to mention that study. And then as soon as he did, Glenn just jumped on him. It was great. It was a fantastic job.
You know who else you should debate? You should also think about, besides Floyd, debating, and I can't believe I'm even endorsing this guy, but he's going to use Bart Ehrman's arguments. Debate J.D. Kane. First of all, it's going to draw in a large crowd if you debate him.
Who, JDK?
Yeah, J.D. Kane. He's one of the people that's on the Magic Sandwich Show.
Oh.
Or if you can debate.
Oh, they wanted me to go on there too. Somebody actually said, was it Floyd? Somebody sent me an email to get me on Magic Sandwich.
No. Let another Christian go with you if you're going to do that. Don't do it. Don't go there by yourself. They're going to set that up to try to embarrass you, where they're going to have like 4 atheists jump on you, and they're not going to be as respectful as you are to them when they come on your channel. I would not.
Yeah, I haven't listened to their See, I always make sure before I go on someone's channel, I have to actually watch a few of the videos to make sure I'm not putting myself in some sort of fire.
Yeah, watch their past experiences with Christians, and then ask yourself, do you want to put yourself through that? Because if J.D. Kane's there and they're gonna have DPR and Aaron Ra there, they're gonna jump you. That's what they're gonna. And it's funny. And it's funny because you know what? Maybe we should send you there, because I would love to be able to have a video on YouTube where I can say 4 men jumped on 1 woman. I would love that. I would destroy their community worse than I've already done it.
Oh my gosh, you're too funny. And Shakaris Sanders, sorry if I mispronounce your name, but Shakaris says, come down to Texas, SJ. I'm in Dallas, Fort Worth. I would drive down to Austin to see you debate Dillahunty. Maybe one day G-Man and I will both go to Texas and we'll debate Dillahunty.
I would love to do that. As a matter of fact, you say you live where? You said in Florida or somewhere in the area or whatever?
Yeah, I'm in Florida.
So you're not far from Kent Hovind.
Oh, Kent Hovind, you're right. I think he's in Pensacola.
Yeah. How far is that? About 2 hours from you? 3 hours from
No,
you?
that's actually a kind of a bit. It's probably 4 hours to Tallahassee. So then I think it's about another 2 hours. So it's about 6 hours from here.
How far are you from Miami?
Miami, I'm 5 hours from Miami.
Uh, I gotta find a way where we can meet in person, but somewhere in Florida. All right. We'll
Well, at
see.
one of these modern day
Maybe
debate
actually meet
things,
up. Hmm?
like James actually still wants to go flying around right now. I think with this virus, I don't think it's a good idea because you might get stuck in some state too. You never know. They might shut off
Well, he
air
can't
travel.
travel nowhere right now. He can't travel nowhere right now.
Yeah, he
Uh,
shouldn't.
I
And
know
but
in Jersey, they're not letting nobody go to another state right now.
yeah, yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think we should probably, I think I'm going to get dinner going and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, she
So
got
it's
her
just,
kids.
I got the kids, got to do some cooking. I got chicken out waiting to be cooked.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yep.
so
All
yeah,
right.
okay. Yeah. So Shakira said barbecues on him. Yes.
All right, guys. So subscribe to SJ Thomas, and guys, you know that her channel is really good. You're gonna get good content on this YouTube channel. She
Yeah.
does a good job of representing your position and our position as well. She does a better job at it than I do because I'm not as nice as SJ, nowhere near it.
No, I think you do a good job. You got a different approach and I think it's useful. I think all these different approaches people have are all useful. And thank you so much, everybody in the chat. And Jordan Rivers, thank you. I love you too. And Slam RN, yes, Pensacola is on the bay. It's right there at the, it's on the like tip. It's on the handle of Florida, if you want to call it the handle. And so,
We
but
definitely gotta do a meetup. I gotta find a way to where I can visit you and visit Kent and do some volunteer work all at the same time. Maybe I come out there
yeah,
3 days, visit
that'd
you
be
and
cool.
2 days with Kent because I'm dying to volunteer for him.
Susan, no, I did not get TP. I've gone to a couple stores and the toilet paper's been out. So I tried to order it online and it's not coming in until mid-April, but I've got like 14 rolls in the house. I actually went around and counted. So I should be okay for a couple days, for 5 days. I don't know. I don't know how long we go through this stuff, but people are hoarders, man, with the toilet paper. It's crazy.
Yeah, and hopefully you're all surviving the toilet paper apocalypse, because it's rough out there, man. Everybody thinks the toilet paper is going to somehow solve the coronavirus. I don't know, man. I really think you need to go get some medicine, but if you want to get toilet paper, that's your business.
Well, in my story, well, here's what was out, or we're limited in purchasing milk, chicken. I mean, all the chicken was gone the first day I went to this Publix. All the chicken's gone. And then the next day I went in there and there was chicken. So I started buying chicken. and I go down the toilet paper aisle and the toilet paper is gone. And I'm like, why are people taking all the toilet paper? What's wrong with these people? So
There's a lot of places in New York and in Pennsylvania where there are limitations on what you can buy, but in certain places in Jersey, like Jersey City and like Newark and those areas, there's no limitation on what you can actually buy as far as food goes. Like I've seen one person buy $300 worth of meat.
oh wow.
This is
Wow,
crazy.
$300 worth of meat. They have that big refrigerator,
Grab all of
freezer.
the chicken, grab all of the beef, and then when you're going over there, you're like, wow, somebody left me a cow foot. Wow, I don't eat this. You know what I mean? It's crazy.
Somebody left you, or
Ridiculous.
some tripe. Everything's sold out but the tripe.
I'm not eating no common fowl. What the heck is this? You know what I mean? So,
That's hilarious. Well, everybody, everybody, please come back. G-Man and I'll probably run this again next week, and maybe we'll try to get Veckel in here. I don't know where Veckel didn't respond. I was trying to get him in here too, but thank you so much, everybody, for coming in. And I'm going to go ahead and end the stream. So you can find G-Man. Go to the description. Okay, here we go.